Madam Chair, you are live.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. At 5:02 p.m., I am going to call the Wednesday, January 24th Quality of Life Committee meeting to order. Of course, it's Wednesday. It's Quality of Life Day. If I could please get a roll call.
Counselor Chavez is excused, I believe.
Correct.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Alma Castro,
Present.
Counselor Pilar Faulkner,
Present.
Chair Cassett.
I am here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff or members of the committee? And if not, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And moving on to approval of the consent agenda. If I understand it, actually, Loretta, go ahead. Which items have been pulled today?
Madam Chair, item B was pulled this evening by Counselor Michael Garcia.
Wonderful. And is there any other item that anyone would like to pull at this time? And if not, can I get a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve as amended. Second.
And may I please have a roll call?
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Chair Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our presentations. We have a presentation on the HomeWise connection. We have Johanna Gilligan, the Chief External Affairs Officer of HomeWise, here to present. So Johanna, thank you so much for being here, and we will pass it along to you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Counselor, so nice to see you. If someone could show me how to connect this to the screen, that'd be great. Okay. Oh, there we go. Wonderful. So thank you for having me this evening. I wanted to thank Johanna Nelson from the Economic Development Department, who encouraged us to come present briefly on the work that HomeWise is doing, in part because when we met recently, she was not as familiar with like the economic development and commercial development work that we're doing. So she thought it would be a good idea to give a simple overview of what HomeWise does and then a little bit of a deeper dive into our commercial and community development work. So HomeWise, you might know, is a community development finance institution with the mission to help people achieve stability and wealth through homeownership. We also have a focus on strengthening neighborhoods, which we achieve through helping people become homeowners who then invest in their communities over the long term, but also through development that we're doing, both residential and commercial. So the quick overview on the HomeWise business model and customer experience is that we do everything from start to finish for people who are interested in buying a home, which is particularly important because we're really focused on helping low and moderate income people become homeowners. And it's an often intimidating process. So we start with free financial education, which can last weeks, months, years, until that person has the credit score, the down payment, the savings for the down payment, et cetera, in order to be able to buy a home. And then it's a one-stop shop from there. So we have realtors on staff. We do lending services with a lot of support from the city of Santa Fe. We provide 0% interest down payment assistance. And then we service the loans. So we help our clients if they end up getting into any kind of life circumstance that might make it hard for them to make a payment, which results in a very, very low 30-day delinquency rate, traditionally under 2% at HomeWise. We also really believe homeownership is critical for addressing the racial wealth gap. It's pretty common knowledge that the majority of Americans have the majority of their wealth in their home, but this is some data specific to our clients. We just looked at a group of 150 clients in Albuquerque that we helped buy a home in 2018, and in 2023, they had collectively amassed $14.6 million in equity. 88% of those folks were people of color. So that's a total of almost $13 million in equity that they did not have, about $100,000 per family. The community development work that we have launched over the last 5.5 years or so is adding to this focus on helping people become homeowners and stabilize neighborhoods through homeownership. This includes several components: participatory planning, which is really a kind of fancy word for engaging people in kind of thinking through what they want their neighborhood to look like. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we've done that in the Sila Rufina neighborhood, but it's making sure that we're hearing from a broad range of voices on how we grow and develop in our own developments, but more broadly in the city. as well as placemaking activities, which we think are very important in a place as rich, culturally rich, and with such a long history as New Mexico. These are actually photos from Albuquerque. A lot of our work, our commercial work started in Albuquerque. So we've done a lot, we've worked very hard to make sure that kind of the history and the cultural uses of the commercial buildings that we've renovated or are building in that neighborhood are responsive to the community. We also have a focus on economic development through our commercial work. So you see two pictures here of our two most recent projects. On the left is a 60-seat bilingual childcare facility that we just opened in September. That was in direct response to people in the neighborhood, a survey telling us that people wanted more out of school time and early childcare uses. So we now have a really high quality operator serving the neighborhood. And then on the right, you see a photo of a project that will be open by this summer, which is a 20,000 square foot business incubator space with a commissary kitchen that'll be run by the Street Food Institute, serving 20 businesses, about 6,000 square feet of office and kind of studio production space, and then 7 micro retail units. So these two we bundled and got a new market tax credit for in Albuquerque, and is a real example of how we've been able to secure resources, capital. We got a congressional project funding award of $2 million and a new market tax credit in order to make these projects happen. We also have a commercial loan program, which is intended to help small businesses and nonprofits own their own facilities. This is Bill Cisneros, also in the Bareilles neighborhood where we work in Albuquerque. He took a previously for many, many years vacant building and is now running, he has a few businesses in that space, a tattoo shop, a tattoo equipment wholesale business, equipment wholesale company, a coffee shop, and a sneaker store. And he's employing over 30 people with really inclusive jobs. You know, he hires people with records, and we really think it's very important that we're thinking about really a broad range of economic opportunities that have on-ramps for people who may have no high school degree, may have no college degree, may have a record. So really bringing a blend of kind of economic development opportunities like that. In Santa Fe, we're bringing the same community development focus to the Silo Rufina Nexus neighborhood. And I wanted to give a little summary of a survey that we did there last year and share a bit about what we learned from surveying over 200 residents in the neighborhood. So first off, the rental versus ownership versus other housing rate was very surprising, very low home ownership rates. The other category of almost 9%, a lot of the folks we interviewed were unhoused. And so just clearly a real mix of situations that people are experiencing in the Silo Rufina neighborhood. We heard a lot from residents that economic and substance abuse challenges have led to a sharp increase in the unhoused population, and that's affecting both housed and unhoused residents. I definitely think it's clear that this part of town is a concentration of a lot of services for unhoused folks. And so just we're being mindful of how we respond to that with our own commercial development. We saw this also in our survey in Albuquerque, but a lot of people don't feel safe walking at night. And so what we've done in Albuquerque is a lot of nighttime activities, which is part of our placemaking work in order to get more people on the street and out at night. I think that's part of what really increases the sense of safety. And another focus of the survey is really what kind of uses do people want in the neighborhood? So a lot of interest in more fresh food access, outdoor spaces, and actually like bicycle and scooter sharing, which is interesting, but blends with this data point that 25% of respondents to our survey walk every day to get to and from places in the neighborhood. Some of them because they have no other option, and some of them because they really want to walk. And so we really think that connectivity and pedestrian safety and biker safety is part of what we need to be involved in as well. To that end, we have been working with several departments at the city and have led on connecting the Acequia Trail, which breaks down currently at Mays Road, meaning that there's a really critical equity gap. You can get all the way to Mays, but then past that, you have to go either to Cerrillos or Agua Fria, making for a very unpleasant biking experience. I can attest to that myself. And so we have actually secured an easement with PNM in the city on the kind of northeast side of Maze Road, and we purchased a property and we'll be creating access onto the park behind that property on the southwest side. So we're really excited about that. That should be up and running in a couple of months. Other things that we heard from the neighborhood are that primary medical care access and actually holistic medicine are really high priorities for residents. And that was really, the holistic medicine access was really a consistent response across demographics, which I found really interesting. So we are beginning to plan for a property that's just behind our office at Rufina and Clark, I want to say, right behind our office. And it's a 2-acre infill project, and the later phases are going to include about 12,000 square feet of commercial. So we're really starting to think through how could we co-locate health providers, mental health, physical health, maybe some kind of seasonal or fresh food access, like a CSA pickup point or something to that end, so we can respond to what we're hearing people want. This project will also include 64 for sale residential developments. We also have this project underway, which will be open this summer, which we're very excited about. This is the commercial phase of our El Camino Crossing project, also in the Silo Rufina neighborhood, that is going to be the home of Escondido, which is a concept with Fernando Ruiz, who's featured here, and Vince Kudlebeck, and it's going to be a Sonoran Mexican restaurant. There's going to be rooftop seating. So come summer, I'd love to invite everyone over to enjoy the view and some mezcal margaritas. And then just a last snapshot, just to give some sense of scale for the committee. We have several projects underway, hundreds of residential units in the pipeline. And so just so you're knowing, just so you can get a little sense of that, we've got Senderos, which is currently a part of Area 1B, hopefully to be annexed into the city soon, which will be a really great residential and mixed use development opportunity. Los Canales, which is a renovation of existing units and an addition of new units off of Alameda. Rufina Centro, which is what you just saw the picture of. And then Los Prados and Tierra Contenta further to the south side. So we have a lot going on. We just wanted to provide a little update about all of our work. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Real fast on this, what is number 6, or is that just an errant 6 that's out there?
I asked that same question and I didn't get an answer.
It's an errant 6. Okay, it is my favorite number,
know,
so
I
I'm
know.
happy to see it there.
Knew the question was coming.
Thank you so much for being here. Really
Thank you all.
appreciate it. Any questions, comments from members of the committee? Councilor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Gilligan, for the update. Quick question in regards to the survey conducted for the Rufina Nexus area. Was that just residents or was it business owners as well? Because it's a highly industrial area, and I'm looking at the map shown. Probably at least 50% is business owners. So can you break down how the demographics of the respondents of the survey?
Great question. Yeah, I think the estimates are that somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people live in that neighborhood, but you're absolutely right. It's primarily industrial and businesses and commercial. And so we did a scattered site approach where we went to different housing communities within the neighborhood, including the Warren Inn. We surveyed at El Camino Crossing, our own project. We surveyed at a senior housing site. We surveyed at Lifelink, so we captured the perspective of unhoused residents. So we got what is a statistically significant portion of the residents. We did not do a business survey. We have not done that to date because our focus is more what residents in the area want, but it is a good question because there are a lot of businesses in that. It's the 3rd largest employment sector in the city.
Right. And I was just thinking based off employee needs in that sense.
Right. Yeah.
Just because I think of myself, if I was employed in that area, what access would I have to amenities in that area? Whether it's childcare, food sources, right? That way I can run to a grocery store quickly after work. Any other amenities that are throughout the city. And I think that's where it'd be great to hear what the employees of that area, given it is industrial, how many of those folks actually that work in that area live in our community. I mean, for example, I a patron of a business in that area, and the gentleman lives in Los Lunas. I mean, he commutes every day to Santa Fe to operate his business.
Yep.
And it'd be great to have a conversation with him in regards to, well, if we offered up X, Y, and Z amenities, would you be a patron of these amenities? So I think looking at it from the perspective of not only the residents, but having that collaborative relationship with the current business owners helps to ensure that they feel represented and that their needs are also met, in the sense that I want to make sure that the business owners don't begin to get priced out of their space, because that's what we've seen in different communities across the country when an industrial area becomes, I'm going to use the word gentrified for a lack of better words, and we don't want to push those services out of the city. We want to embrace them as much as we can. So thank you for clarifying the results, and I just appreciate, some of the additional projects that you're going over. One of the ones that deeply interests me is Tierra Contenta Phase 3. I know that the city, we really need to begin to put some resources and energy and everything else we can put together to get that moving forward, because I think that's an opportunity we just haven't moved forward. So Mr. Brown, I don't know if you have any update on that. Sorry, Ms. Gilligan, but I know we've got an expert here at hand, so as well.
Thank you,
Ask it.
Counselor. I'm not necessarily an expert, but maybe a little bit. The affordable housing team is working with partners, and HomeWise is one of the partners that they are working with. And we're hoping in the next 6 months that we have something solid that we can move forward with, because there has been about a year or so of work on diligence and how we structure the development plan. Also additionally working with Public Works on getting that capital outlay to extend Jaguar Road in that area. So there's a lot of work that's being done, and we're hoping in about 6 months to have something solid that we'll bring forward to the council from that standpoint.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
This is something you had, and thank you. I wanted to let you know that the Economic Development Department is working on an urban Main Street program with Silo Rufina Nexus. And that's one of the things I wrote the scribble to get something back to you, but they are kind of working to figure out what the small business community is there, because you're correct. It's a highly industrial area, and we want to keep it highly industrial, even though there is some mix going on. So the Urban Main Street program that we're working on, we received a grant, and part of it is to build an engagement strategy with the local businesses there on top of the residents that are there.
Great. Thank you for both updates, and I'm looking forward to the update on Tierra Contenta Phase 3, just because that is much and deeply needed housing in our community. So thank you and the city team and the partners for working on that. No other questions, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Gilligan. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Castro.
Yes, just to sort of echo the sentiments of Councilor Garcia, Silo Rufina businesses are organizing, and I think you're aware of that. And so I would love to have a conversation with those businesses in relation to what's happening, and also similarly with Senderos, with community members in the area and how they feel about that expansion.
Great. And in fact, the reason that we started to do commercial lending is because we are aware that residential rent or mortgage prices gets a lot of attention in the discussion about gentrification, but that legacy businesses and rising commercial rent rates do not. So that's a real opportunity that we have. We really like to focus that commercial lending product within the neighborhoods where we're doing community development. So I'm very glad for you to know about that, to share that with businesses. We have helped businesses in the neighborhood buy buildings. For example, we helped LifeLink buy their behavioral health club, where they do a lot of their services for residents on Luana Street. So that's really an opportunity for businesses.
Those are all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? I just have one question. Echo a lot of what my colleagues said around looking at businesses. I know you and I have had this conversation around affordable commercial, that, we have an affordable housing issue, but we do also really have an affordable commercial challenge in the community. I am curious if I believe this is the case. Are you coordinating at all with the Main Street program, and what does that collaboration look like between what you all are doing and what's happening with that broader Main Street program.
Yeah, great question. Yes, I really appreciate your point, Mr. Brown, about the Main Street initiative, because I was going to make a similar point that I think is really the wheelhouse of Main Street to understand what the businesses need more than HomeWise. Yes, we are. And I believe that actually Isaac Hammond Paul, who's the Director of Community Development, is applying for a role on that committee with Main Street. So we were on the original application. I think it took a little bit of time to get the wheels moving, but yeah, we've been in touch with everyone and hope to have a formal role moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I guess this is more of just a comment. I think I've been talking about the Rufina Siler area since I was elected 4 years ago, the first time. And I think that this is just such an incredible opportunity in this district, especially because of that industrial nature. We don't really have many of those industrial areas around the city. With Escondido coming, I think that it's just such a boon. And if my understanding, they're looking at some actually late night hours.
Sure.
They'll be open past 8 o'clock, which is wonderful. But I am really, when I'm looking at this area, some things that I'm interested in, you mentioned some of them, is really the walkability and the placemaking piece of this. I mean, it does have a very industrial feel, which is great, but I think that there's a lot more that could be kind of brought out in a more modern industrial that can be very inviting. We do also have, Rufina, Second Street on
Yep,
Rufina.
right.
Gets confusing,
Yep.
different streets, as well as Meow Wolf there. And so looking at the connection between some of those daytime businesses as well as nighttime businesses, I'm very excited for the focus in this area. It does, of course, behoove us that there are some other larger challenges that, we have been facing with public safety. So I think getting some of those nighttime activities going, I'm really excited to hear about that. I know that lighting has been a conversation in that neighborhood, as well as accessing bus routes, have been a couple of things that I've seen. So glad you're focusing on it, and just wanted to add in a few of those things there.
Yeah, and if I just may respond really quickly, I really appreciate that perspective. And I think you're very right that there's so much there actually. And I think that between the Main Street coordination and now us being able to bring a little bit more of our own community development focus on that community, there's real opportunity to make the sum greater than the parts. And I think one thing for the council to really consider in that is I do think this Acequia Trail connection is a big part of that. And I really believe that if we can connect those neighborhoods kind of to the northeast and the neighborhoods to the southwest, it's very important for equity, especially for people from the south side trying to get maybe up to the east side for work, but also because there's, I think, probably more potential for people who might enjoy an amenity in the Siler Rufina neighborhood, but might live in Casa Alegre or the Baca Street neighborhood. They might bike or walk if there were safe, well-lit places to do that. So I know that the MPO is intending to make the full Acequia Trail extension a priority project. And I just would urge the council to really push for that, because I do think that will help unlock more of what your vision is, Councilor.
Wonderful. Thank you. And it sounds like Councilor Faulkner does have a question. Go ahead.
Coordinating with the police and fire at all to maybe put some measures in that could prevent unsafe areas while you're building this out?
Such as could you give an example?
I think when we build communities, sometimes we forget to plug in safety as a component of building the community out. Right? So there's things you can do. There's ways you can do lighting. There's ways you can do streets. You can do sidewalks. You can do landscaping. There's all sorts of things that can be done that we may not consider if we weren't talking to safety about it.
Chairman, Councilor Faulkner, if I can speak a little bit to that, that's a good question. So this urban Main Street corridor project, our team is working with fire and police on that very subject, where as we convene the different, we're kind of building business groups, but we're also putting resident groups together. And part of it is that we bring the fire and police into these conversations to speak on subjects of how they address it. What does the emergency management do? What does the police do and what's the protocol right now. And I'm going to note to ask about the lighting piece. I think that's a very interesting piece, but fire and police are involved in this urban Main Street program, this grant that we have, and they're a part of the team that's working through how to build strategies there.
And I only bring this up because in my neighborhood, the interior contended they went for density. And so they have no sidewalks
Mm.
on most of the streets. And the streets are only 20 feet wide. When someone has a problem on my street after 5 o'clock, no emergency vehicle can get on my street. They have to park on either side of the ends of the loop and they have to run to the person's home. And so it's not just about lighting also, it's about how wide the streets are. Are there sidewalks? Are the sidewalks adequate? You know, and that kind of stuff we have to think about because it is life threatening. We almost had one of our neighbors die because they could not get to them fast enough with the vehicle. They couldn't have a vehicle in there at all because the street was so narrow. That's it. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that though. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you, Counselor Faulkner. I would be operating under the assumption that those concerns, which are very real and important, would be addressed via the land use code during the permitting process. And I think that we're very much in support of anything that helps get more daytime and nighttime activity, more eyes on the streets, because I think there's also a distinction between safety and sense of safety. And so we do ask about resident perception of safety in our surveys. We will do a follow-on survey to the one that we've conducted in the Sila Rufina neighborhood a couple years from now. So we're definitely very interested in safety, and I think take kind of a perspective of from maybe more of an urbanist perspective that there's the real issues of safety, but then there's also just what makes a person feel safe, and often that's seeing other people and feeling like they're not alone in a dark place. So thank you very much. We share your safety concerns.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Sure. Counselors, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to our one item pulled off consent. It is item B. It's request for approval of amendment number 1 to item number 23-0493, exclusive negotiation agreement with Midtown Santa Fe Productions QOF LLC to extend the term through August 4th, 2024 with no corresponding change in cost. We have Karen Iverson, our Director of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency. And Councilor Garcia, you pulled this item, so I'll send it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here tonight. And I guess just a quick question, because this is the second extension and this is beyond what's allowed per the initial contract. And so, which got me to reading the contract that we had signed a year ago, or not a year ago, back in August. And so I'm going to refer back to the contract. And so please bear with me. And if any of my colleagues want to look, this is on page 24 of our packet, but in page 17 of the contract, section 5.5.4, under delays and difficulties, it states both parties shall promptly report other party any delays in completing any performance benchmarks and any difficulties associated with satisfactory performance of any related activity. The offer shall submit feasible and reasonable solutions to address delays and difficulties for the city's review and consideration. If after such coordination and consideration, the delay or difficulty is not resolved, it shall be reported to the parties' executive directors, decision makers, who shall confer and attempt to mutually agree upon resolution. Both parties shall document in writing all such delays, difficulties, issues, resolutions, and agreed upon actions. Said documentation shall be incorporated into the next regular progress reports. So with that being said, and I didn't see any documentation included in the packet, was there any documentation included in the weekly progress reports that's stipulated per the contract? Because if you look back, and this is page 16, 5.5.1, regular progress reports, talks about that the progress report shall be no less than every 30 days, then 5.52, weekly conference meetings. So per the contract that we entered into back in August, there should have been update meetings, weekly meetings, and then should we run into any delays and difficulties, appropriate documentation be provided. And I don't see any of that in this packet. So I don't know if that was made available. If it was, can we receive that we would consider it as part of this extension request?
Thank you for that question, through Council Chairwoman, Committee Chairwoman Cassett, Councilor Garcia. You have pointed out some very clear language in the contract about how we should proceed through this process. Let me tell you where we are to date. We have done some due diligence that's noted in the exhibit. So I think that is sort of our document, the new exhibit that documents what we have done and completed versus our benchmarks of how we're going forward, I think is our attempt to communicate to you sort of where we've had greater timelines for things than originally anticipated. That was an exhibit to the contract, a new revised benchmark and deadline schedule. I think that is sort of how we're trying to communicate that without getting into it's an ongoing negotiation. There's a lot of things in flux. And we felt like that was the appropriate level to bring forward through this amendment.
I appreciate that clarification, and I did see that documentation, but as what would be helpful to make this decision is determining whether the delays, difficulties, issues were satisfactory. And I think if we get into a predicament where it could put the ENA in jeopardy, I don't think we're prohibited from going into executive session to discuss that. I want to make sure that I have all information available to make the determination, should we extend this or not? Besides just saying we've ran into some challenges, here's the new deadlines. I'd like to understand what these challenges are. From both standpoints. Is it a city challenge? Is it the contractees challenge? It really helps to understand where the issues lie, because if it's on the city end, I'd like for us to remedy that as soon as possible. That way we're not putting the person we're in this agreement with in a predicament to where we have to continue to potentially extend. And so I guess with that being said, I'm kind of at a loss to how we move forward, because we can't just say, well, here's the new timeline. Well, why do we have a new timeline? And per the contract, it's supposed to be clearly outlined. And I'm hoping, and I'll ask this question, is it documented that any delays, difficulties, issues, any resolutions is it documented through these quarterly reports? I guess I'll ask that.
So let me give you some a more clear status update on sort of what the city has done, what the developer has done, and Philip Chesaway is here in the audience. So to date, we've done, Philip has done environmental assessment. He's done building condition analysis. He's done a lot of planning and looking at the utility infrastructure, which PNM is a very difficult entity to kind of work through that piece with. We've been refining the development program, the phasing, and also working with the community partners to define what the educational component is going to be there. There's a recent press release about the internship program that was launched with the Santa Fe Community College in partnership. Philip was one of the partners on that. So on the city's side, we've been working on the property subdivision. We have had a cash flow problem, but that was remedied with the $800,000 allocation in unanticipated revenue that helped us gear up and get the consultants on board to help finalize a subdivision plan to more clearly understand what the conceptual utility plan is and how that impacts this development and what. Okay. what terms we need to include in the contract. So we now, once we got that bar through, we were able to move forward with those contracts. We also have outside legal counsel now on board who specializes in these kinds of complex, multi-phased development agreements. So that funding was essential to get us the funding to bring the consultant team on board. And now also on this agenda is getting the allocation from the state. And so that will continue the funding to do the technical analysis to move the project forward. So looking forward, what we need to do in order to finalize and have a development agreement with you is to actually subdivide the parcel so we have a clear delineation of what it is that we will be conveying, or we have subsections of it so that as phases are done, we're conveying only that property. We're continuing to work through what the roles and responsibilities are for the infrastructure and really honing in on a final conceptual plan. And now that we've got the legal team on board, dialing in the development agreement terms. I think that it was mostly an issue of funding and of also having the right team members, outside team members on board to help us move the work forward. And we're very thankful to Philip and his patience in working with us through this.
Okay. Make sure I'm understanding correctly. Were all of the challenges on the city's end in regards to what's requiring the extension of this? And again, if we need to go into executive session, I'm happy to do that. And whether, let me look at where this heads next, because this, let's see. Sorry.
It's heading to Finance Committee on the 29th.
And then governing body.
Anybody? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we need to schedule an executive session, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
All it takes is 3 of us. So I don't know if 1, 2, if Councilor Faulkner, Councilor Cassidy is good, we don't need the mayor, we don't need the city
Yeah.
manager. 3 of us say we need it, we need it.
Yeah.
So we can, but I'm putting forth the recommendation now, and I can coordinate with others if we need to. We need to do that, but I'm definitely open to extending this, given some of the challenges, and they didn't seem not too insignificant.
Yeah.
But I'd like to understand if, what challenges were on the potentially the contractee side, because it ultimately lets me see the holistic picture. But thank you for explaining some of the challenges that we've had on the city end. The $800,000 problem of not receiving that appropriation, that darn late audit prohibited us from getting understandable. So the legal counsel problems, I think, Rich, is that something that we should have known going into this, and knowing that this is something we've got with this, is this legal counsel going to help with any of the other ENAs?
Yes. Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, very good questions. I want to answer or address 2 of them. We do have weekly calls on all matters of development. We actually have, I think she has 3 calls. I'm only on 1. So I think there's 3 weekly calls. And then the other matters are legal diligence. And so that's where we may go into executive session to discuss the legal diligence. And we do have Ms. Magali is here today in case we can discuss anything legal. But there mostly has been legal diligence, and the firm that we have engaged recently came on board, but we had to figure out what we were going to provide for scope of work. So now we have a scope of work. So there is some city challenges. I think on the contractor's challenges, I think it's really more than just getting his plan together, but we've had issues with P&M and others with plats and lot splits, et cetera. So it's been sort of city diligence work that's actually kind of delayed to bring us to this date. And so we're pushing it to August so that we can underpromise and overdeliver. And so that's kind of where we are. We have these weekly calls. We have legal diligence we're working through that we could discuss in executive session, but they are moving forward. But if you'd like to go deeper, and I can ask Ms. Vigali if she wants to address it, but we can, if we had to do an executive session, we could tell you about the legal diligence that's been happening.
Okay, and I think just would be appropriate to have this discussion, an executive discussion on this, session discussion on this topic during this. I definitely understand, you know, a lot of the challenges were at the city's end. I think that was one of the concerns when we approved this that I had was 2 months. That's a lot of work to be expected in a short period of time. And, you know, I think, remind me, Ms. Director Brown, the other ENNs are a year, correct? Or
Year, yes, they are. That's right. Councilor Garcia, they're a year.
okay. But I appreciate the clarification. But I do have some questions that maybe should be asked in executive session. So I can connect with you offline about that, Director Brown. With that, I'm happy to make a motion should there not be any other questions from councilors. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, council members of the committee? I think on the whole, we've really appreciated having executive sessions for these because they are, of course, you know, the nature of just dispersing of property and the complexity around having these proposals still be private, or private's not the word. What's the word I'm looking for? Confidential. There it is. Until we actually do have an agreement. So I think on the whole with these, we should maybe just kind of consider that there will probably be requests for executive sessions. I think we've seen it in every single committee that an ENA has come through. So something to be prepared for. Kind of piggybacking off of what Councilor Garcia was saying with the original timeline being this 2 months. I mean, this really was a hurry up and go project. Are we at risk for the delays of this no longer really working? That is something that I am, concerned about, that I want to make sure that, and obviously Philip's here, and that bodes well that you seem to be in support. But I would like to hear a little bit more about that, because I don't want to put ourselves at risk that we might lose out on this opportunity. There was a lot of things that really congealed with what was in the community development plan and what's already happening on the old Schellenberger property.
Chairwoman Cassett. Well, I'll speak from what Philip has conveyed to me, but you're also, if you'd like to hear from him, we are very sensitive to that, and we know that time is money and we need to get the project moving forward. I do think that the original timeline, given the amount of technical things that needed to get worked out, subdivision, was always kind of unrealistic on the city's, on our behalf. We have talked about this timeline with Philip, and it is our goal to move faster than the 6 months. And we have expressed that, and we think we have clear sort of benchmarks with him to get there sooner than that. But as Philip has communicated to me a commitment to stick with us at the table to see it through.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate that. Very glad to hear. And then in terms of what this means for some of the future ENAs, I mean, this is just the beginning. And how is this setting a blueprint or really streamlining what's going to be happening on Midtown? We have our early start projects, but I think I get asked about when are we going to put housing on Midtown, at least a few times a week. And so I am hoping that there are some lessons learned, or maybe even some of the groundwork that is going on through this process that is going to really speed up a lot of the rest of this project.
Absolutely, Chairwoman. We are building the legal document and the legal template that will then be a platform for future developments. We have had to figure out the subdivision. We've had to figure out the conceptual utility plan. It's our goal to very quickly go from the conceptual plan to full design of the full master utilities. So there are a lot of economies of scale on this front end of needing to do our due diligence to prepare the site, that going forward, we could anticipate a much shorter ENA time period.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's good to hear. Glad that we're going to be able to lay some groundwork. And Philip, sorry you had to be the the first to go through this process, but thank you for sticking with us. And thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this likely in executive session at governing body on the 31st. And if that is that, if can I could please have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. May I please get a roll call, and with a note that Counselor Faulkner had to leave at 5:38 p.m. So she is now excused.
Counselor Michael Chavez.
Garcia.
Garcia.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Happy to be Chavez.
I know, I'm looking at the wrong line, sorry.
Yes.
Counselor Alma Castro.
Yes.
Chair Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Director Iverson, for being here, and thanks, Philip. Okay, and for the rest of the Midtown team, you guys didn't have to talk, but thanks for being in the room with us. Moving on to matters from staff. I will hand it over to you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. I just have a couple of things. On the Midtown side, which Director Iverson did not speak to. Today, we just finished a 2-day land redevelopment charrette with all of our partners. And so to your earlier question about how have we parcelized, I keep using the word parcelizing. How do we parcelize the land? We've parcelized it, and we have a sort of a starting plan as to where we can start the housing development. And so we're working on timeline and cost, but we have a infrastructure plan that we can sort of move forward with. But it was a 2-day session, was very well done, and I commend her for the work she did with all the partners that were there. So that just finalized this afternoon. And then also we working through the unanticipated $800,000, but we're also found out today that we are moving forward with the FY22 audit results. So that means that our second tranche of capital outlay will come through our fiscal agent. So we'll have more working capital to move something forward. On the economic development side, on the Office of Economic Development, we are hosting a coffee meetup on Thursday the 25th at Santa Fe Cafe, Hotel Santa Fe, with the NMIDEA Economic Development Conference. So we're inviting everyone, if you'd like to come and meet some of the ED staff and leaders from around the state. They're all here because of the legislative session. And then additionally, Director Nelson is hosting an outdoor rec conference too on February 6th at the Convention Center, where we're inviting our local partners. Oh, Chavez Center, you're right. Someplace you own, that's right. She's speaking up for her assets. It's Chavez Center. And then on the arts and culture side, we just found out on Monday, I was traveling, but we found out on Monday that 4 of our local Indigenous artists were recipients of a National Creative Capital Award. There are 50 awardees, and 12 of them came from the area, and 4 were Indigenous artists from our area. And it's exciting, very exciting. So we're working on a press release to get that out to the community. It's really exciting. And then additionally, the Arts and Culture team is working on the Arts and Solution grants. They're working with the commission on that now. So we're hoping to have some answers there. And one of the things I wanted to do in the next quarter is have some of these recipients come to Quality of Life and just do a 5-minute, just who we are, and move it forward, just so we don't have 7 hours of presentations. But there's some really interesting grants that are coming through there. The Land Use Department is working on the final phases of the RFP reviews for the general plan. So hopefully that's going to make its way in the next month or so. And then lastly, I found out from the Tourism Department that Santa Fe was featured on the Today Show on their solo travel series as one of the best places to travel as a solo traveler. So I thought it was pretty fascinating. So that's all I have. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Director Sanchez Tucker. She's here with us tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I just have a couple of things. Something kind of fun, if you've been watching The Curse on HBO or Max, the Fort Marcy, Jim is in it, and our very own Gregory Fernandez has a starring role, 3 minutes. He's in there. So just kind of a fun thing that we were featured in a show on HBO. We have family game night at the Teen Center on Friday at 5:30. So I'd like to invite you all and just invite the public to come have a family game night. There'll be food, tournaments, lots of fun. So a great way for families to get together and experience the Teen Center. And in February, more details to come. We'll be hosting another teen night at the Chavez Center with a Valentine's theme. So that will be fun. So be on the lookout for that. So just a few things that we're doing for our youth. It's also that time of year where we are thinking about doing our taxes, and it can be stressful for everybody, but especially people who might not be able to afford having tax preparation. So the Santa Fe Public Library is once again partnering with Tax Help New Mexico to provide free services for people who have an income of 65,000 or less or 65 or older. So you can find more information on that on the library's website, or you can call their phone number, which is 505-465-9776. And please help spread the word, because that's a really important service and a great partnership that we have. That's all I have, but thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Loretta.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'd like to introduce to you your new liaison in training. This is Marcella Apodaca. She is the Business Operations Manager for Community Services, and she's been with the City of Santa Fe since October, I believe, mid-October. And so I'm sure she's going to do a great job, and I look forward to well, I will still be her backup as needed. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Loretta, for all of your work. And Marcella, we are really looking forward to having you. I'm really looking forward to working with you. And it really will be a pleasure getting to know you. And Loretta, please do come by and visit us when you get the chance. Wonderful. Thank you. Moving on to matters from the committee. Any matters from the committee today? Nope. Matters from the chair, I have none. Our next meeting is Wednesday, February 27th, or nope, just 7th, February 7th, 2024. That's where the 20 came from. And at 5:54 p.m. we are adjourned.